this is Rob Charney on Opinion versus Opinion on Old Guy Tech TV, and we are going to talk about some interesting things today. And along with me is Jonathan Charney. The guy in the middle box is John Manajas. Did I just screw that up? I choked.
Manajas, you've been sticking it for the last 27 weeks, but I figured...
Manajas,
whatever.
You mean the man who knows his place by sticking in the box.
Well, it ain't. This is what makes the show fun, folks. I screw up all the time. So what?
I never do.
Nah.
No, you just know how to roll it into what you're saying. I mean,
well, sorry about that intro. Once again, we did it again. So we'll keep going. That's what keeps you watching, right? You won't see that on CNN. They're more professional. Let's ask them. They'll tell you.
Yeah, but you have to buy products with us. You send us $5 or $10. We come back every week.
That's right.
But did you hear the best news about CNN?
What's the best news?
They're looking to drop Piers Morgan.
They are?
Yeah, that's the news I've read lately.
Thank God.
Well, from the outlets that you read, they would be wanting to drop Piers Morgan.
Well, actually, from what I've read is apparently he's refusing to do retractions. Apparently he's said some things that CNN's had gone, you need to tone it down a little bit and you need to apologize. And apparently he's kind of said, no.
Well, but CNN's credibility is a bit suspect when Newt Gingrich takes money to put people on TV, and it's part of his contract. Did you read that?
Yeah. What's wrong with that? Free enterprise.
Newt Gingrich, that's a little suspect, but Newt Gingrich is actually an interesting talking head, though.
Newt Gingrich is one of the biggest con men. He charges you. He'll send you a certificate and put you in his who's book. He'll lend his credibility.
Wait a minute.
Himself like nobody's.
Who's who is still around?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And since we brought up Newt Gingrich's name, the last time the government was shut down, it was shut down by Newt Gingrich in 1996. And there were Republicans' seats all over the highway that were replaced in the next election.
So why, the question that I've always gotten, why now? What does it? And so I remind people that the fiscal year for the government is October 1 through September 30. And that's why we have our shutdown. Today is the 2nd. This is the second day of the shutdown. And I thought it was interesting. I went on and looked at what is still running and what isn't. And also, I guess, Obama has allowed certain things to be funded and some not, and of course,
isn't that illegal?
Well, there's some questions as what he can and can't do, but he can do whatever he wants to do. He's the president.
Well, I thought I could be wrong, but I thought when there was a government shutdown, the federal government had no means and no ability legally to spend money.
Well, let me ask you this: we're some trillions of dollars in debt, right? But we don't have any money anyway.
Well, it's debt
less
limit.
Trillions than we were.
Well, that's fine, but we still have trillions in debt. So if you were to take it and look at it as a company, as a business, and your debt is so high...
It's a government.
Technically,
Stop.
we don't have any money.
It's not a business.
We don't have any money. We're broke.
Unfortunately, I do think John is right, especially since... well, no, here's the thing.
That's it.
Well, here's the thing. The U.S. government has set precedents that you can permanently run in debt. So it's not a business. Because if it was, it'd be failing. They'd be poor. People would be whoring themselves out. Unfortunately, it's not.
Well, this way.
How do they whore
People
themselves
are whoring themselves out,
yes.
Jonathan, right, for their own gain and their own profit. And I sometimes think not in the public interest. But the issue of it is, and this happened during the election, I would get things from the conservative side that would compare the Social Security of the government to Walmart. If you want to, the government is there, and the greatest example that I'll give you is FEMA, and no individual state, no city, could afford emergencies like FEMA, and the federal government comes in with the full faith in government and power. And,
Brown's doing a great job.
That after Sandy, there were the 80 senators in mainly protected districts that have hijacked everything right now and caused a shutdown. well, we can't give them any money unless
Wait, hold on.
the government is here
when he was leaving
for the
office,
common good.
cautioned against political parties that were at war with their own government.
Okay, go ahead.
But that's unfair.
I gotta have
That's
Nancy.
unfair. I thought it was unfair last week because you just beat a dead chicken. You don't like Pelosi. I don't like Pelosi either. But she doesn't she is the minority
I know.
rep in Congress. If you don't like her, find a way to get her out of office in California. I'm looking for a meaningful way. She is a red herring for the conservatives, and you're just baiting with that, Rob.
Yeah, and
it's not
the point
fair.
It's
not fair.
Oh, it's not fair. So,
well, when we supposedly say that we have no agenda, we're not like the talk radio, we're not like CNN, we're not like Fox, we're not like MSNBC, and you keep pounding a point of view because you hate Pelosi.
I do.
It's baiting. It's your show. You can do whatever you want.
There you go. So
but it's contradictory to what I thought conceptually we wanted to do.
No, because actually she goes on to talk about some things in this short video, and I thought it was pertinent to the discussion. And that's why I brought it up.
She hasn't said anything that I know of publicly.
Yes, this is last night she was talking all about what the shutdown's about.
So I have a question. Besides the Obamacare thing, which will not change, the only thing I agreed with the shutdown was actually trying to have a meaningful conversation about the debt, which no sides are willing to have ever. And this is the one.
They have been invited 12 times, and they would not come to discuss. It's been offered.
And this is
right
the one,
now. Supposedly, the Republican congressmen are meeting with Obama. Because it is possible now there are enough votes in Congress to pass the clean bill that came back to the Senate and to the Congress. But Boehner won't bring the bill up and let it be voted on.
Unfortunately or fortunately, I think Boehner's days are numbered. He's starting to I think he's starting to burn bridges. I think he's grandstanding too much.
Our friend Ted Cruz attacked him, and then the next day, everybody turned around and vilified Ted Cruz as being the best guy on the planet. They're very confused in what they do. And I will say to you that this whole government shutdown is an attempt at a nullification of the presidential election when last held and the president. Because, you even take the ridiculous Jimmy Kimmel on the street thing where he asked people whether they preferred the ACA or Obamacare. They all hated Obamacare, and they thought the ACA was much better.
Yeah, not knowing, of course, anything.
Here is the question. The question is, because both parties play games, the question is, if the Democrats were in office, do you think they would do it?
What do you mean? They are in office.
Well, yeah, but they're not in. If it was reversed, would the Democrats do the same thing?
We'll find out, because if this shutdown of the government mirrors the last one, there are going to be dead Republican bodies all over the place in 2014. It's a different time. It's a different place. I don't know if that will be true, but when over 80% of, according to polls, 80% of the population doesn't want to shut down the government. They're not behind it. And the propaganda machine on the conservative side with Coke money, some really disgusting misrepresenting television ads about Obamacare has been very effective in convincing people that Obamacare is somebody. I don't know if you saw the Jimmy Kimmel thing. Somebody asked, well, do you think if Obamacare goes into effect, they'll come after your guns? And the guy said, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I actually don't think that's a decent fear. Reality is separate, but I think that's a decent fear, because now the government has kind of a way into your medical records. I actually think that's a reasonable. They say,
we all agreed on previous shows. Yeah, we've all agreed on previous shows that we don't want government into our medical records. Period. Right. Well,
and they will, if they are paying for it. There is a custodianship in there. I have not read enough of the ACA to tell you that your medical records are protected. And I can also say to you, Jonathan, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not going to be watching you. It is a leap of faith. I know that in other countries where there is socialized medicine or universal health care is what I'm going to call it, that in some ways, and we've talked about this as well, my medical records need to be private. I need to have a right of privacy over them. It's nobody's business unless, if I don't take my meds, I'm a raving maniac.
No, the point is you'd be afraid to tell your doctor what really is ailing you and not get the treatment that you need if you're worried that the government's...
And at that point, it's 1984 and Big Brother.
Exactly.
It already kind of is in some ways, in some way not. I don't know. I mean, is it justifiable paranoia? To me, it is a little bit. But on the other hand, they're already watching your, whatever, your phone calls, your Facebook accounts.
It has, and again, it's been my point all along that, if we had our Fourth Amendment, if our Fourth Amendment rights were not violated by the Patriot Act, or at least that opened the door,
right?
Just wide open. And the only thing that the Obama administration and the Congress and the Senate seem to agree on is they will all get together and say, to renew the Patriot Act in the in the middle of the night and in the light of the sun doesn't make any difference. But the only thing in the 5 going on 6 years of the Obama administration that they all seem to agree on is that our Fourth Amendment rights should be suspended, they should be violated, and let's renew the Patriot Act.
The question some people are asking is, a lot of the laws don't cover technology. They don't cover your online privacy. So the question I think people need to see and need to ask is, does the constitutional right protect what you do online? And the question is, in the two-side offense is yes, it is, and the other side it says no.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reasonable expectation of privacy online.
Right, and you have to realize this whole thing where anybody can say anything without supporting it factually at any time.
And let's remember, there's members in government that don't like even what we're doing right here. The ability,
right,
which, by the way, is Nancy Pelosi.
Well,
or is it
I didn't want to say it anymore because John's saying I'm beating a dead horse, so I'm not going to.
Well, I think it's fair because it's Feinstein or Pelosi. I don't remember. They actually said that, and that was actually their part of their whatever they said. I mean, I think that's a fair shot. The question is how exactly she meant that.
Well, and as I said the last time, at least from my point of view, the issue is, Pelosi's got to go, Feinstein's got to go, Boxer's got to go, because we have 60 and 70-year-old people, from my point of view, representing Hillary's got to go. They're all, in my opinion, unless they're, just old hippies trying to get it back, the fact of the matter is they're way too old to represent a progressive, quote-unquote, point of view that you and generations younger than you, Jonathan, are going to inherit it.
Right.
I mean, it is, and I'm too old to represent it. I want to see some younger faces saying, let's, we should have some equality, but the progressive point of view is being marketed by very old people.
Here's the issue I personally think you're going to run into is, I think in my generation, even younger, there's even a bigger gap where I don't care what you do, as long as it's not necessarily in my face. I don't care. But there's the other point of view where people care more. So I think it's going to be harder for the generations before me to really kind of equal it out, because it's never happened. It's very rarely happened in my lifetime where there's a compromise that actually meant anything coming from government. I'm
going to jump in here on this just for a moment, because I looked up a few statistics to try to figure out, this shutdown thing isn't new. Since 1977, we've actually had 17
times.
Right.
Wow.
17 shutdowns. They usually last no more than 2 to 3 days. The longest, John mentioned earlier, the longest in history was from December 16th, 1995 through January 5, 1996. 21 days is the longest. So, we're not really in new territory here. I mean, this is something that happens fairly often.
I agree with you when it comes to a shutdown. I disagree with you from my point of view of this is a presidential rebuke and an attempt by 80 congressmen who represent not the because 12 have broken with the Republican caucus and said they will vote for the clean bill, and it makes enough votes for us to move forward and not shut down the government. But Boehner and his 80-person extremely conservative caucus won't bring it up. When it was shut down before, it was not directed as a rebuke to the president, trying to nullify a law that is the law of the land, which we agreed last weekend. So let it go. Let's try it. Now, there have been some glitches in the system, some computer issues, but millions of people between yesterday and today have signed up to be part of Obamacare, or I'm going to call it the Affordable Care Act, because maybe people will open their ears and listen to the things that they're gaining and not, I don't know if you saw the Wolf Blitzer, what's her name from Wisconsin, the woman that ran for president the last time on the Republican ticket. Gosh, I can see her face and I can't think of her name at the moment, but they got into it. And she's an attorney. She's not an intellectually limited person. And she just, everything she said was a total untruth. She's the one that, it'll come to me, seniors are going to die, children are going to die, people are going to die if Obamacare goes into effect.
Now I've read some stuff, and granted, I haven't read a lot of it, but I've heard in some of the countries with socialized Medicare or healthcare that is a concern to a certain degree, but I don't know if it's within the era of margins. So I don't know.
I think we agreed last week that we feel that at this point, let's let it go and see what happens. Now, I don't know if, John, if you've personally looked at your medical situation.
I haven't, because I'm working so much this week, and it's a matter of, dollars and cents for me. I have to see what kind of support I'd get from the government based on my income, because right now to pay what appears to be the California premium, which is $300, which is some $250 less than I was paying for Kaiser 4 or 5 years ago. When
they have multiple levels, and when Blue Shield sent me what your new plan's going to be, they had me on what they call the Platinum PPO plan. This is the cream of the crop. You can't get any higher than this, and it's $962 a quarter, I believe, something at that point.
That's $300 a month.
Yeah, so it's right in there somewhere.
So and I voiced this with our friend, of a different point of view, of which he's actually coming around a bit to this. And the thing of it is, because he said, well, it said my son could have Medi-Cal. And I said, well, one of the reasons it said your son could have Medi-Cal is the federal government is funding all state medical programs in the states that go along with the ACA, and Medi-Cal will be funded by the federal government at some level, at least for the next 3 years, at 100% for the feds. The states don't owe anything. So it's part of the exchange. In Australia, in England, and in Canada, the three I've experienced directly, I know that France has it, and Germany has it, and Italy has it, all through Western Europe. Korea has it. Actually, the Chinese are trying to do some kind of universal medical care as well. But like in Australia, the basic cover, everyone is basically covered. It's inherent in a fee that is some kind of tax or fee out of your paycheck. And if you're indigent or not working or on the dole, they pay for this, and you have a basic level of medical care. If you want something better, like you were talking about the Platinum Supreme plan,
right?
Then you pay $100 or $200 a month more to have a better cover. But in the case of At $300, they're talking the best one. But yes, there are levels. And I mean, I spoke to somebody the other day who pays $175 a month through their company, but they have a $3,500 deductible.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's only catastrophic care,
Yeah.
of which you can, and I don't know this experientially, I know this only theoretically from reading the law and understand what's going on. And as I posted the other day, next week, since I don't got me no health insurance, so I needs me some Obamacare, I will go to the exchange and experientially find out how much and what it's going on and how much I'm subsidized, and I'll be more than happy to share that with you people because I am one of the uninsured Americans.
I do have a website for at least people in California to check out. It was the one my insurance agent told me. It's covered.
California.
CA.com. That's COVEREDCA.com. And if you click on it, there's a little, basically what you do is you enter how much money you make a year and some other information. And it should give you, to tell you if you qualify and if you do, what level. The bottom level is actually Medicare, and it goes up from there. Medi-Cal. And it goes up from paying like $1, $5, $300, really depending on
your deductibles.
Deductible.
Yeah.
No, that's, yeah. Well, it's the deductible, but also you can end up paying $100 because there's also a reimbursement or something. So you
there's subsidy, and then there's tax credits.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in the case of the people that don't make a lot of money, like I'm currently in that situation, tax credit. Yeah, right. I got the money to front them till the end of the year to get it back.
A lot of good that'll do you.
But that's why the IRS is involved in the ACA. Number one, to verify that the income that you say you made, and this is another one of these catch-22s, that what you tell the ACA you made last year and what you told the IRS what you made last year had better probably be the same number.
Good idea. Another checks and balances on you, huh?
It's a catch-22. So if you short cheated on one side and yet not on the, so I mean, there are inherent problems. What is the kicker here is that Medi-Cal option at the lowest level. That's really the way I see it, and I'm looking at it as an economist and former insurance agent. That's the beginnings of your single payer.
You know, I wonder if we've got anybody watching the show that is currently in the insurance business. 530-621-1210, 530-621-1210. If you are, we'd love to hear from you because I'd like to get a little more expert opinion about what's going on. Because, like I said, I spent some time reading the new package that came to me, and I'm still a bit confused on how some of this works. So it would be good to hear from an expert. And if anybody else wants to call in and talking about the fact that we've got this shutdown and what it means to you, does it have any actual effect on your life? I'd be interested to hear about it as well. There's a lot of, you're seeing on television, of course, they're talking about, like the museums that are closed down, and we have
the World War II monument that the vets stormed yesterday.
Yeah,
the open air monuments, by the way, they're not in anywhere. They're in the middle of the mall in D.C.
I understand that, and
I was actually explaining it to the audience.
To the audience. By the way, breaking news: meeting between Obama and congressional leaders ends without an agreement. So we'll go on for another day.
So here's a question: anybody want to take any bets on how long this is actually going to take? I have an idea.
3 weeks.
I'm thinking 10 days. So yeah.
Well,
you're going to run into the debt ceiling fight, which they're kind of holding out to put the double whammy on this nullification.
The debt ceiling fight, I actually don't think is a bad one. The Obamacare, they just need to give it up. It's too late. The debt ceiling talk,
so
at least, I think actually is a helpful conversation, in my opinion.
Between a
and I must enter at this point, and this is where my biggest beef is with the Obama administration, is they're not fighters. I don't see any fight in them. They never have explained the ACA well to people, and they've let the conservative side define what it is. And when Palin and gosh, why can't I think of that woman's name? I can see her face.
You're not talking about Michelle Bachmann, are you?
Michelle Bachmann.
Okay.
Talk about these death panels. And do you want government death panels? Well, boys and girls, you have insurance death panels now. In other words, insurance companies, evaluators, when you have to submit for this procedure or that procedure, they're deciding on whether you need it, you don't need it, whether they'll pay for it, and they won't pay for it. So if you want the private sector death panels, or do you want government death panels, if you want to call them that?
Yeah, which one do you trust more?
Well, and where the NIH, people are not doing experimental drugs. People with the shutdown are not being able to have experimental surgeries for things that would advance research. The sequester had already caused a situation where 20% of U.S. scientists had to start seeking employment outside our borders.
Now, I want to ask you guys a question, because this is my complete opinion. Is I actually think the government shutdown is not a bad thing depending on how it's used. The Obamacare thing, it's too late. That conversation was over, and the Republicans lost when the Supreme Court okayed it. I actually think fiscally it's a good way to have a conversation and say, we need to stop raising this or do this. What are some ways that we can healthily look at this instead of having both sides at some point or nine grandstanding about it?
Well, I want to take just a second and just so people understand, because we're mixing apples and oranges a little bit, the difference between a shutdown and a debt crisis. And in a shutdown,
but they're going to jam the two together. It's pretty obvious to me.
In the shutdown, the government lacks the legal authority to spend money on non-essential services, where in a debt crisis, the government is mandated to spend money, but doesn't have the legal authority to borrow the money to spend it. And that's the difference between the two.
And in response to what Jonathan said, here's the deal. We already have the sequester functioning, okay, which is killing jobs, and I mean it's hidden, and the longer it goes on, the more damage it will do. By putting 800,000 government workers out of business or out of work and out of a job, we are in a consumer economy. So if you take practically a million people and stop paying them, it's going to definitely affect the economy, which is a secondary effect of this. My issue is this. Before you ever get to this debt ceiling issue, which I understand what you're saying, but our balance of payments and our debt has been decreasing under the Obama administration, which he is not capable of saying, shut up, I'm doing something about it, you're not giving me any credit for it.
Well, I just want to hear the conversation. I just want to hear the conversation. I realize we're doing better than we have and this and that, but I just think we should have the conversation more often.
Considerably. The issue of it is, I think that if you were to really embrace and take a look at the sequester, which you've heard me say here, and I will repeat at this point, it's indiscriminately decreasing the size of the bureaucracy, right, by its cutting money funds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think before you get into this debt ceiling issue, you already have something that's doing the job. But rather than letting the sequester do what it does indiscriminately, I think that you go, okay, guys, look, actually, we have a deficit reduction tool that's working right at the moment. Mm-hmm. Rather than letting it work indiscriminately, why don't we take some time to investigate with this sequester action that we've got and targeting it to cut the fat and reduce the bureaucracy, which is the federal government. I mean, we have the anarchists that we don't need the government. Well, folks, unless you want anarchy, yes, we do need the government. Whether it be state government or federal government or city government, there's a reason we have government. But I think if we actually met the debt ceiling with, well, let's manage the sequester to reduce the deficit, not indiscriminately, but on a targeted basis, we could actually get together and accomplish what needs to be done, in my opinion.
See, I completely agree. I actually think that's part of the conversation. And for some reason, it's the sacred cow on both sides. For the Republicans, I actually think that's kind of odd, is they don't want to look at what programs are working, like welfare. Actually take a look how much is fraud. If there's a lot of fraud, figure out how to keep it, but change it where you can still help people. And that's the thing I think government doesn't like to do is if it's there, they don't want to figure out how to help it. They want it to stay there. And I think that's the biggest problem we have.
And at the end of the day, we need to streamline the bureaucracy, the pension plans, the merit raises, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And last week, $10 an hour, $1,600 a month, $19,200 a year. If you're paying that, I guess it sounds like a lot of money, but in a consumer economy, you're giving young people the opportunity to, as Rob and I did, I got a roommate and we rented an apartment and we were both working a job, and then I got an extra job, and I was going to college, and somehow. But right now, without $1,600 a month, I don't know how young people get off their parents' payroll.
I can't disagree with that, especially since numbers are showing that more and more kids are choosing to come back home or staying home while going to college. And I mean, it's what it used to be, where families, multiple generations of families live together just to survive.
In many situations, and Jonathan is no different than our friend who's a judge's son. They're both the same age. They're finding it difficult to find. They both, actually, the one has a college degree, but he's finding it difficult to find meaningful employment in the private sector. We need part of this, and part of this whole situation that we're not dealing with. And I mean, Elizabeth Warren, we need to restructure the student loan thing. I have an immense student loan for something that I probably will never ever earn a meaningful living with. We really have to look at this and go, number one, in the high schools, I don't see the kids. Some kids do, some kids don't. In a rural area where I am, there is a pretty strong work ethic. And in the oil fields and ag, there's an opportunity to make some money. And you don't have to be a college grad to do it. But we need a way to get that lift up, and we have a lot of rhetoric, but we need to create a system that allows one, if one is willing to go to work, to lift themselves up by their bootstraps and see a better future based on the fruits of their labor. I
was going to say, I actually have a college degree. I am actually I was an architectural and structural drafter. The thing, this is my major problem with the school system.
And Jonathan, I just want to qualify, is that a 2-year or a 4-year?
That's a 2-year. I have an Associates of Science.
I had an Associates of Art degree for the majority of my life and made a nice income.
It's showing, believe it or not, the statistics. I was looking at a sheet, and people with 2-year degrees are actually outpacing 4-year degree people in employment.
Well, because they don't owe the kind of debt that a 4-year degree person owes.
It's true.
My big problem, and always been big problem with school system, is this stupid, and I really think it's stupid focus on college. Nobody should go to college if they don't feel it's necessary. I never did. I wanted to do drafting, so I went to a school specifically designed to teach my dumbass how to draft. So I think the problem is everybody says they need to do this, they need to do that. No, some people, cars, mechanics, tradesmen, and the fact, the old school mentality is, hey, if I'm good at this with my hands, let's find a job doing that.
Well, we certainly can't be a world full of just white-collar workers, can we? I mean, we have to have people smart enough to work on your cars and build your airplanes and draft your programs and do everything that's involved there. So, yes, you're right. The constant beating for some people, college is not the answer.
And by the way, it's not a bad thing. And if you think we're saying that, it's not. I know people who are mechanics are some of the smartest people I know. So it's
right. No, absolutely.
And I hate when people say, "Oh, this guy's a plumber." Really?
Yeah, and they're trying to be what they look down at that person because his job is a plumber.
Yeah, this person drives a beat up old Ford F-150 versus a $100,000 Mercedes or whatever, and I'm sorry, that doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the other things that are going to happen on the government on the shutdown. How many federal employees are going to be furloughed? We don't have an official number on that, but so why do some federal employees continue to work during the shutdown? And the answer actually is the law, or at least the Justice Department's interpretation of it, contains exceptions for several classes of employees. The biggest exception is for employees necessary to protect public health, safety, or property. But property could include government data, ongoing research and experiments, or other intangibles. Political appointees are exempt because they cannot be placed on leave by law.
Damn.
Employees necessary for the president to carry out his constitutional responsibilities are exempt. So, and finally, employees whose salaries are paid from sources outside any annual spending bill can still get paid and report to work. So, although we have a shutdown, we still have quite a few people still employed. So,
I do have one.
It isn't like the door shuts and the airplanes fall out of the sky.
I do have one thing to ask, and one thing I wish we would do. If the government shut down, could we not pay the congressman, for crying out loud?
Well, but you have Ted Cruz, who I think I mentioned last week. I found out his wife is a biggie at Goldman Sachs, so he's donating his salary. Between you and this, I'm getting even for your Pelosi thing. He ought to ask his wife for the money, because it was Goldman Sachs and those people who stole our country.
Yeah.
I just
yeah.
Sorry,
that.
I just don't want them. If I really want them to be on Obamacare. I want them that if they don't work, they don't get paid. That's what happens to me. So I'm totally cool with them kind of being up a creek a little bit.
I understand what you're saying, but part of this issue is, and this really got me, when they came back and came back, the Congress passed another budget and sent it back up to the Senate, and Harry Reid and those people said no way. But they added not only did they have the Obama poison pill,
mm-hmm.
they added a contraception poison pill. So that that any employer that objects to, Planned Parenthood, not meaning the organization, or planning your parenthood, and the use of contraception could refuse contraception coverage, which at this point, because these are issues that are 30 and 40 years old, that they're trying to poison pill. Well, we'll let you have it, but you have to delay Obamacare, and you have to give free choice on contraception. If you asked women about that, it's a choice that they want to have, I think, across the board.
I agree, and I'm so tired of pork barreling and special projects that these guys throw into all these bills.
It's like Ted Stevens' Bridge to Nowhere.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, it's exactly that. As citizens, if we don't talk to your representative and say, hey, listen, nut job here, yeah, all right, so you created a job in your district. I understand why you did that, but what did you do for the rest of the country? And it's generally, to get reelected, it's easy to say, hey, look at all these jobs I created by building this bridge.
Boys, here where I live in Kern County,
yeah.
In the middle of this recession, we're building a crosstown freeway. And before the recession started, we have a Riverwalk feature in downtown Bakersfield,
yeah.
which is pretty blighted place. The Granite was contracted 24/7, including New Year's and Christmas Day, to build this facility.
By the way, hottest river rock on the planet.
Well, but here's the deal: Chevron produces enough oil out of Kern County to pay for the rest of Chevron International. The Kern County, through its ag and its oil, and we get and Thomas before McCarthy, who is your majority whip in Congress, he's one of those guys standing right there. We get a great deal of pork barrel because of our oil and ag.
Yeah.
And I mean, because things go on here in spite of there being no money. and you talk about shovel-ready jobs. Man, there were more shovel-ready jobs with the recovery money in this county than you could turn around and look at.
Yeah.
So the pork barrel, I mean, it's always been in America, and here's the issue that comes back to what you're saying, Rob. Okay, if you don't want the federal government the way it is now, and the Ted Cruzes and the Louis Gohmerts and the McCarthys and the Ryan and all these guys, fine. Then tell me the kind of government you want to replace it with. Offer me an alternative. Because part of this deal was they were supposed to give us an alternative to Obamacare. Not poison pill it and say, look, if you want us to pass the budget, you got to delay Obamacare for a year.
So I have a question. I was wondering if you guys wanted to do a little future forecasting to the next major election, because I think depending on how this is handled, it's not gonna go well. And this is my prediction, and unfortunately, I really do think with the Republicans hammering on gay marriage, this Obamacare, and a few other things, if the Democrats spin it right, there'll be no Republicans in Congress.
I don't know that it'll be a clean sweep because guys like John Boehner are in gerrymandered districts. When he ran, he is up for re-election, but when he ran the last time, he had no opposition because his district has been drawn in such a way that unless he got Tea Party primaried, there's nobody there aren't enough Democrats in the district to even make a difference.
You would take that argument. You would say, because Republicans are on the precipice of taking back a number of seats
in the Congress. I mean, in the Senate.
Yeah, the problem is they're pissing away things by doing stuff like this, and instead of focusing on the things that I think are more important, like stopping the Democrats from taking guns, doing this, doing that. I think they need to focus on things that are a hell of a lot more important than arguments they've already lost. I mean, not only are they lost, they're beating its corpse.
Well, the abortion issue, these are things, the modern society, the world in general, and it's a monumental decision for a woman to decide to terminate a pregnancy. It's not something that's done lightly, but sometimes, when they really sit and think about it, and you don't add the moral religious side to it, and some won't do it because of their religion or morals, and that's the decision they make. But logically, sometimes, if you're 14 or 15 or 16 or 17 or 18, and right now, the fact that the WIC program is shut down is going to have an impact in my county, big time. That as difficult as it might be, as a life decision, it might be wiser to terminate than to go through with the pregnancy. I think that in '96, man, the Democrats, it was like your friend Pelosi got her big kick after Newt Gingrich shut down the government, and the American people didn't want it. And in this case, the number is actually 72% of the American people polled didn't want the government shut down, and they're trying to shift the blame. Well, it was the Democrats because they wouldn't take the poison pills and they wouldn't delay Obamacare, which is the law of the land, folks. That ultimately, I think the American people and the nullification of the law and the rebuke of the presidential election that's not very thinly veiled here. Obama won by 20-some% in the vote. These people are going to extract a payment. If you're not in a gerrymandered district, if there's any possibility, they're going to throw the bums out.
Unfortunately, this is going to have mileage for years.
Well, here one of the things, there's this economist by the name of Mark Zandi, and it was interesting. What effect would a shutdown have on the economy? So economists say even a short shutdown, and that's 3 or 4 days, what they consider short,
right,
would begin to shave decimal points off the economic growth. A sustained shutdown of 3 weeks to 4 weeks would do significant economic damage. And I don't know what side of the fence this economic economist is.
Well,
however, he brings up a damn good point. I mean, we are on the precipice of being able to start growth again, get jobs going back again, get people working again. And if this shutdown should hang on for 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to go backwards to everything that we've gone forward to.
And the deal is 800,000 federal employees. Now, the one that is my close friend, and you know who he is, I mean, that's a 6-figure a year government job. Another friend of ours who's an instructor at the Monterey military school, he's on furlough too. Yeah. That's a 6-figure a year job. And the thing of it is, and I repeat this to people, and we sometimes lose sight of this, we are not a production economy anymore. We gave that up after World War II. So the steel mills, the manufacturing plants, all that kind of stuff, we don't so much do anymore. Okay? And being a consumer economy, our economy relies upon people spending money. Mm-hmm. And if you remember, after 9/11, President Bush got on the TV and said, okay, folks, I know you're scared. I know you're in shock, but we need you to go out and start spending money again. It's killing the economy.
Right.
Because we all were very frightened, didn't want to go in public places. We're insecure about where we went. When you take 800,000 people and say, you're not getting paid anymore, and you're not going to get paid until the government comes back up, and then they'll get back pay and stuff like that. They'll have to negotiate that. The fact of the matter is, those 800,000 people not spending money are going to affect Walmart. They're going to affect. You will find small retailers, the small businessman that we always will go out of business because people aren't coming in his store that might otherwise support his store, but they don't have the income to go out and spend money, and they don't know when their income's going to come back.
And this is affecting the military too, right? I mean, this is affecting the Joe Blow on the front line too, right?
No. He and you know, that's one of the things Obama said. Look, you people in the military, we're not going to mess with your wage,
right?
But
what it's affecting, you know, but you've got park rangers at all the national parks. They're not working.
Because I know somebody who, after reading...
Let me just, one other thing to finish. You know, that situation yesterday, because the conservatives got all excited about the World War II vets that blew by the cops, and the cops looked the other way. The thing of it is, what Obama has done in some of these cases, and I'll say the administration, because people so hate that man's name, the administration has done, they have a responsibility to provide security so that national parks, national monuments, etc., do not get defaced or destroyed when there is no park service or anybody there to protect them.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't want to be buried for all the tea in China. This has got to be not a very fun time for him.
Well, they're trying to kill his predecessor. I mean, it is an act of nullification of the law and of the president and of the popular election.
I'll be honest, I know enough Democrats that are unhappy with him as it stands, so I think he was doing a good job of it as his own. But I do know people who it seems like this government shutdown has affected them in the military in certain ways, whether it's promotions, some pay. I'm getting this odd feeling that it's doing things.
President Obama had a Asian trip planned to Indonesia, the Philippines, and the two smaller Oriental countries that he was going to, Asian countries he was going to stop in, those got cut already. And the possibility that his entire trip will be can't. Hey, look, Air Force, Navy, or Air Force, there are two military academy football games this weekend, and they're off. They can't happen.
Does this mean he can't make any more golf trips?
You know, and I really got to go get the stats. He has not vacationed to the level that you and your father believe.
I was just giving you crap.
No,
I don't actually care.
I want to see proof. I don't believe it.
I'll give you some.
You get some proof.
I'll get you proof.